Hi, this is Dick Dinman, and please don't touch that dial because part 2 of my DVD Classics Corner on the Air salute to the incredible Universal Classic Monsters Essential Blu-Ray collection continues as I salute the legendary horror star Boris Karloff with my distinguished guest, Sara Karloff. WMPG, Gorham, Portland. Hi, Golden Age film fanatics, and welcome to DVD Classics Corner on the Air. My name is Dick Dinman, and our goal is to become your exclusive guide to the very best of the Golden Age classics coming out on DVD. We'll have reviews, breaking news of upcoming releases, plenty of surprise guests, and a special feature devoted to the great Golden Age film composers, which we call Cinemusic. So let's turn on the marquee and lights, camera, action. It's time for Dick's Picks, in which I get to shine the spotlight on one of my Dick's Picks of the week. For the first time ever, 8 of the most iconic cinematic masterpieces of the horror genre are available together on Blu-ray as Universal Classic Monsters, the Essential Collection, brings together the very best of Universal's legendary monsters. Imaginative and technically groundbreaking tales of terror that launched a uniquely American movie genre. This definitive collection features 8 films, including the original Dracula.
I am Dracula.
Dracula. The very mention of the name brings to mind things so evil, so fantastic, so degrading. You wonder if it isn't all a dream, a nightmare. But no, this is no dream. This is Dracula, the original terrifying story of a maniac and a man who lived after death, lived on human blood, took the form of a vampire bat, and lured innocent girls to a fate truly worse than death.
Frankenstein.
Oh, it's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
When this dead hand moves, the monster created by a man they called mad is turned loose to strike terror into the hearts of men, to shock women into uncontrolled hysteria, to prey upon the innocence of children. This is the story you've heard about, talked about, the spine-tingling, blood-chilling story that stuns your emotions. Frankenstein.
The Mummy.
Death, eternal punishment for anyone who opens this casket.
The Mummy. Is it dead or alive? Human or inhuman? You'll know. You'll see. You'll feel the awful, creeping, crawling terror that stands your hair on end and brings a scream to your lips. There's nothing on earth like the Mummy.
You will not remember what I show you now, and yet I shall awaken memories of love and crime and death.
The Invisible Man. The Bride of Frankenstein. The Wolf Man.
Whoever is bitten by a werewolf and lives becomes a werewolf himself.
Oh, don't hand me that. You're just wasting your time.
The wolf bit you, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
The Phantom of the Opera, Technicolor remake, and the original 3D incarnation of The Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Not since the beginning of time has man known such terror.
No.
Creature from the Black Lagoon. Startling beyond belief in the screen's first underwater 3D thrill. Science was baffled, but there it was in the deep, deep waters of the Amazon. A living link with the dawn of time. Powerful, destructive, A woman's beauty, the bait that brought it out of its lair. See underwater thrills never photographed before in this most terrifying of all science fiction adventures. Creature from the Black Lagoon. Astounding in 3 dimensions. Up from the depths of the mighty Amazon comes a creature to astound and terrorize the world. No! Creature from the Black Lagoon. Shocking in the realism of the screen's first underwater 3-dimension thrill. Grimly, men of daring venture into a dread world underwater, stalking a creature of frightening fury, a creature stirred to strange emotions by its first sight of a woman. Creature from the Black Lagoon. Even more amazing in 3 dimensions.
Plus a collectible 48-page book, original posters, correspondence, documentaries, filmmaker commentaries, interviews, storyboards, photo galleries, trailers, and so much more. Universal Classic Monsters, the essential collection, will make your skin crawl. But in a good way. Courtesy of horror icons Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, Lon Chaney Jr., and Claude Rains. And it's available now from Universal Studios Home Entertainment, even as we speak. Stay tuned for more Dick's Picks, coming up on DVD Classics Corner on the Air very soon.
What's it all about? Everybody's dead. I feel like a dinosaur. Oh, I know how people think of me these days. Old-fashioned, outmoded. You can't change a whole lifetime with one picture. Oh, Sammy, what's the use? Mr. Boogeyman, King of Blood, they used to call me. Marx Brothers make you laugh. Garbo makes you weep. All art makes you scream. And once I thought I'd be an actor. Oh, it's not that the films are bad. I've got bad. I couldn't even play a straight part decently anymore. I've been doing the other thing too long. And even that isn't the point. You know what they call my films today? Camp. High camp. My kind of horror isn't horror anymore. No one's afraid of a painted monster.
And that, of course, is the unmistakable voice of the one and only Boris Karloff. And no, he isn't really talking about himself. That's just a scene from his final U.S. film, Targets. And today, to commemorate the Blu-ray release of Universal Classic Monsters, the Essential Collection, which contains 8 classic horror films, including 3 of Mr. Karloff's, Frankenstein, The Mummy, and Bride of Frankenstein, it's my great pleasure to pay tribute to one of the silver screen's most distinguished actors, and what a thrill it is to play host to none other than Boris Karloff's talented daughter Sara, who through the years has been instrumental in keeping the brilliant legacy of her iconic father alive. Sara Karloff, welcome to DVD Classics Corner on the Air. It's wonderful to have you here. I've been looking forward to this for such a long time.
Thank you so much. I've been looking forward to it ever since you contacted me about it.
We're celebrating the release of the Universal Classic Monsters Blu-ray collection, which has 8 great titles in it, but 3 of which include films that star someone who you may have cursorily known, named...
Indeed. My father, Boris Karloff.
To see these great classics in such pristine form is really remarkable. And what it does in its stunning clarity is it shows you the extent of your father's talent, especially in Frankenstein, which we'll get to, but your father had such an interesting background before his career breakthrough, which really was in midlife. I think he was in well into his 40s.
He was 44 when he made Frankenstein. He'd been in the business for 20 years, but nobody knew it but him.
Yeah, I know. And during that time, he worked as a farm laborer, railway baggage handler. Let me see what else. In fact, did so much manual labor that he ended up, I understand, with major back problems for the rest of his life.
That's true. That's true. He did. He ultimately had 3 back surgeries. But the carrying of Colin Clive up the hill and the back lot of Universal certainly didn't do his back any good either.
And what about the costume, which was pretty bulky? I hear it had 4-inch platform boots, shoes weighing 13 pounds each. Yeah, it must have been incredible.
Well, he actually lost 25 pounds during the making of Frankenstein because it was shot in the August heat of Southern California, and much of it was shot outside. So he was already he'd already been a starving actor for years, so he was very slender at the beginning of the film, the shoot, and by the end of it, he had lost 25 pounds.
Well, if he'd lost much more, he could have been the Invisible Man.
Indeed, he could.
Did he ever talk to you about those so challenging and difficult early years in his life?
No, because he was grateful for the pivotal difference that the role of Frankenstein made in his life, both personally and professionally. And those early years, of course, tough as they were, he regarded them as training and just what it took to get to the place he was on the right corner at the right time when Frankenstein came along. He loved his profession, and he never complained about anything or anyone. He just was grateful to be able to remain a working actor all his life. Frankenstein was his 81st film, and hardly anyone had seen the first 80. And he had spent 10 years in repertory theater in British Columbia before ever arriving in Hollywood. And that's really where he learned his craft.
And isn't it interesting to think that if Lon Chaney Sr. hadn't prematurely died, Bela Lugosi would never have gotten Dracula, and your dad would never have gotten Frankenstein because Bela Lugosi probably, from what I hear, did not want to do it. I hear...
Yeah, Bela turned it down because he didn't want all that makeup, and he didn't want to do a non-speaking role. You know, when you say that Bela wouldn't have gotten Dracula, he probably would have, since he had done it on the stage. But my father certainly would not have been offered the part in Frankenstein since had Bela not turned it down. And, of course, the first person who would have been offered it would have been Lon Chaney Sr., because had he not, as you say, died prematurely.
We pause now for station identification.
DVD Classics Corner on the Air is proud to be a presentation of Southern Maine's own WMPG FM, 90.9 and 104.1 on your dial. Am I correct? Because I believe Boris Karloff had very visible roles in prior to was Scarface prior to Frankenstein or after?
I believe it was after.
It was after.
I believe so.
I think you're right. And also, for those who think that horror was all that Boris Karloff did, he is brilliant in a John Ford film called Lost Patrol.
Oh, yes,
And
indeed.
it is a great performance. I think it's Oscar worthy. It's that compelling a performance.
It is indeed, and available to be seen.
Yes, indeed.
I would recommend it.
It's actually part of the John Ford collection that Warner Home Video released, and it's remarkable to see how powerful an actor he could be away from the horror genre.
Oh, absolutely.
Which
absolutely.
We'll get to in his later career, because that's when he really got some plumb non-horror roles, which I'll want to mention as we move on. But all of this publicity, and I think it's just publicity, about a so-called feud between Bela Lugosi and Karloff. Knowing what I know about your father, I can't imagine that he ever had a running feud with anyone.
It was indeed just publicity. They worked together, I think, in 7 films, and they had a very good professional relationship and respect for one another. They didn't socialize together because Bela, being Hungarian, he had his own personal interests and pursued them when not at work. And my father, being British, the same was true of his personal interests and pursuits when not working. So they quite naturally didn't socialize together, and that is the same today. Entertainers will work long months together on making of a film, and then perhaps not see each other again until another opportunity to work together comes up. So they worked together many times, and comfortably and with respect for one another, but they did not socialize together for obvious reasons. But they certainly did not have an antagonistic relationship. That was all media hype.
It must have annoyed your dad somewhat for these publicity guys to spread such gossip around, which of course the public lapped up.
Well, I think he understood the job of the press. There were just so many stories out there, and so many journalists, and they had a job to do. That was part of his job, to be written about, and it actually. He's one of the few people in the business about whom nothing negative was ever written or said. That's extraordinary in and of itself.
There are very few, maybe a handful of stars in which you don't need their first name. There's a Garbo, there's Gable, there's Bogart, and there's Karloff.
That's true. It's iconic. His legacy has become iconic, and it's due to the fans. I mean, the fans are just remarkable, just wonderful, and so respectful of my father's legacy. I get emails daily that pour in with wonderful stories about the impact my father's work has had on them, and the example he left and set for people. And no matter what role he played, his own kindness came through, the empathetic manner in which he played so many of his roles came through, and his fan base just adore him. It's such a wonderful experience for me. People share their respect and their admiration for him through their emails and tell me stories of their grandparents or their parents, and the stories that have been passed down through their families. And the multi-generational appeal that my father's work has is just remarkable and rewarding to his family, certainly.
And you know what aspect of his talent isn't touched upon, and this is just my personal feeling enough, is his prodigious sense of humor.
Oh, he had a wonderful sense of humor. Really, if there is such a thing, a typical British wit and humor.
In 1940, he went to Broadway in Arsenic and Old Lace, and one of my great regrets, and this is not to take away from Raymond Massey, who ended up doing the film and was terrific in his own right, but I do really regret that Boris Karloff was not asked to do the movie with Cary Grant for Frank Capra. I hear it's because the Broadway production did not want to let him go. They let the two ladies go to Hollywood to do the film, and I believe the gentleman who played Teddy Roosevelt, but they drew the line at allowing him to do the movie because they were afraid that the receipts would fall off on Broadway. Now, is this true, or have I got it?
Oh, my father was asked to do the film. But he had a contractual obligation to the play, and they wouldn't release him to do the film.
How did he feel?
And my father always regretted not being able to do the film, and for posterity, it is a real shame. My father was always very sorry he wasn't able to do the film, but he did have this contractual obligation, and there was nothing he could do about it.
Well, one of the first times I saw him, and I don't know whether it was any compensation to him, he did do a live television version of Arsenic and Old Lace.
Yes, he did.
And I believe it was with Helen Hayes and Mildred Natwick, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it was, and with Tony Randall and Peter Lorre.
One thing that happened, which I think was terrific in the mid-'40s, was his association with producer Val Lewton at RKO.
Oh, yes.
Because those three films, all of which are available, courtesy of Warner Home Video, Isle of the Dead, Body Snatcher, and Bedlam, are amazing performances. I will tell you that probably my two favorite Karloff performances, even ahead of Frankenstein and The Mummy, are The Body Snatcher and Bedlam. They're
wonderful. They are absolutely wonderful. They are such good scripts.
Yes.
They are so beautifully shot and directed and so suspenseful and atmospheric. And, of course, Bedlam is based on a true situation, a true asylum, and that existed earlier in England. So it's really, really chilling.
It's extremely chilling, and it just shows you how great an actor Boris Karloff was. Because, for instance, with Frankenstein, the thing that made it work was his incredible ability to project underneath all of that makeup the vulnerability of the monster. I mean, this is an amazing achievement, but then for a gentleman, and I think that is probably the best word for Boris Karloff, to be able to invest such complete evil into a role like Bedlam and Body Snatcher, it amazes me.
Well, that's true. Three things about my father's acting was his voice, with which he could do anything. He could terrify you or soothe you. His eyes, again, he could make them very soft, or he could make them terrifying. And his use of his hands. His hands were beautiful, and his use of his hands in Frankenstein, when he reaches for the light, or when he's terrified, or when he's confused as the creature, his use of his hands throughout all his performances. Those three things he used brilliantly in every performance, and they conveyed so much, as much as whatever his dialogue was.
Well, and the other thing I noticed, because before you and I are getting together now, I watched about 5 of his performances, is the fact that he used stillness to great effect. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
His focus seemed to be laser-like, and sometimes when other actors were comparatively flitting around, his stillness created a kind of a mesmerizing power that's almost hypnotic to watch.
It is. You're right. Have you seen The Black Cat?
Yes.
That's an evil film.
Oh, yes, it is. And
that is evil.
Yes, it is. And even by today's standards, it's pretty raw.
It is. It is.
Please join Sara Karloff and yours truly, Double D, next week as we continue our tribute to the uniquely gifted superstar for the ages, Boris Karloff. Well, that's my show for today. DVD Classics Corner on the Air is conceived, written, produced, and directed by me, Double D. And if you missed any part of this show, or if you'd like to hear some of my other latest shows, just go to the archives section at www.wmpg.org. And if you'd like to hear some of my older, vintage shows, please go to www.dvdclassicscorner.net, where in addition to the broadcasts, you'll find hundreds of my print reviews of classic DVD releases. So, until next week on WMPG,
keep well, keep happy, and keep listening.